The galaxy was old. 12,000 years had passed since the first species learned to fold space and travel between stars. In that time, empires had risen and fallen. Wars had been fought and forgotten. Trade routes connected 100,000 worlds, and the great conclave of species kept peace among them all. The galaxy had been mapped completely. Every star, every planet, every moon had been and studied. Scientists knew the composition of distant nebulae and the spin of black holes at the edge of known space. There were no more mysteries left to solve, no more frontiers to explore. Except one. The terminus expanse sat at the far edge of the galactic arm like a wound in reality itself. It was not a place of darkness or danger in the normal sense. It was simply nothing. Sensors pointed at it returned empty readings. Light that entered did not come back out. Ships that crossed its border vanished without a trace. They were the first to lose a vessel there 8,000 years before humanity learned to make fire. They sent their finest exploration ship, the crewed by 200 of their best scientists. It crossed the threshold and ceased to exist. No distress call, no wreckage, nothing. They sent another ship to investigate. It too vanished. Over the following, other species tried their luck. They sent a fleet of 7 warships, thinking numbers might help. All 7 disappeared at the same moment. The collective, beings of pure machine intelligence who felt no fear, sent an unmanned probe. It transmitted data for exactly 3 seconds after crossing the border, then went silent forever. The data it sent back was pure noise. The conclave recorded 417 attempts in total. Some were scientific expeditions. Some were military operations. Some were desperate refugees with nowhere else to go. All met the same fate. Eventually, the conclave declared the terminus expanse forbidden territory. Warning beacons surrounded it on all sides, broadcasting in every known language. The message was simple: turn back or die. The physicists had a theory. They believed the expanse was a tear in the fabric of reality, a place where the rules of the universe simply stopped working. Matter that entered was unmade at the quantum level, scattered into pure entropy. The who were a spiritual people had a different explanation. They called it the mouth of ending, a gateway to the void that existed before the universe was born. Their priests taught that it was hungry, that it fed on life and light, and that one day it would grow large enough to swallow all of creation. The collective had no use for theories they could not prove. They simply marked the region as non-traversable in their navigation databases and moved on to more productive research. For 10,000 years, the terminus expanse sat untouched. Species came and went. Civilizations rose to greatness and crumbled to dust. The forbidden zone remained, a dark mystery at the edge of everything, waiting for something that might never come. Then humanity arrived. They came from a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 centuries earlier, which made them practically infants by galactic standards, the youngest species to ever join the conclave. At first, the older races paid them little attention. Newcomers were common enough. They would learn their place in time, absorb the wisdom of their elders, and eventually contribute something useful to the galactic community. This was how it had always been. But humans were different. Ambassador Eth of the was the first to notice. She had been assigned to oversee humanity's integration into galactic society, a job she considered beneath her considerable talents. But something about these creatures fascinated her. They asked questions, constantly, endlessly, about everything. This was not unusual for a young species. What was unusual was the nature of their questions. Most newcomers wanted to know how things worked. Humans wanted to know why. Why did the hyperspace lanes follow the paths they did? Why were certain planets seeded with life while others were left barren? Why had the great architects who built the galactic infrastructure vanished millions of years ago? They had stopped asking such questions long ago. The answers were unknowable, so seeking them was a waste of resources. Better to focus on practical matters. Humans did not see it that way. When their scientists reviewed the historical records on the terminus expanse, Eth expected them to react as all species did, with fear, with caution, with sensible acceptance of the conclave's wisdom. Instead, they requested a meeting. Admiral was a small woman by human standards, though all humans look small to the. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age, but her eyes held a sharp intensity that made Eth uncomfortable. 417 ships, said, studying a holographic display of the expanse. Spanning 10,000 years, multiple species, multiple approaches, multiple technologies, all the same result. Yes, Eth replied, which is why the region is forbidden. Surely you understand this. I understand that you've collected 417 data points, said. That's not a warning, Ambassador. That's a research opportunity. Eth's scales shifted to colors of alarm. You cannot be serious. Every attempt has ended in death. Every attempt so far, corrected. But has anyone actually analyzed why they failed, compared the different approaches, looked for patterns? The ships vanish. There is nothing to analyze. There's always something to analyze. Pulled up records from the ancient expeditions. Look here, the sent warships with maximum firepower. They lasted 2 seconds longer than the science vessel. Why? The probe transmitted for 3 seconds before going silent. What was different about it? These details matter. Eth stared at the human. You want to go there, to the expanse. We want to understand it, said. We want to know what's on the other side of that boundary, what's causing the disappearances, whether there's any way to survive. The answer is no. The conclave will never grant permission for such foolishness. Then we'll go without permission. The words hung in the air between them. Eth's scales cycled through shock, anger, and finally settled on something close to pity. You would throw away the lives of your people for nothing, for a mystery that cannot be solved. Admiral smiled. It was a strange expression, Eth thought, warm and sad and determined all at once. Ambassador, where I come from, we have a saying, the only impossible things are the ones we stop trying to do. She stood and straightened her uniform. We've spent our whole history being told what couldn't be done, that we couldn't fly, that we couldn't leave our planet, that we couldn't travel faster than light. Every single time we proved them wrong. This is different. This is not a technical challenge. This is the fundamental nature of reality. Maybe, acknowledged. Or maybe it's just a problem no one has solved yet. Either way, we're going to find out. The conclave voted unanimously to deny humanity's request. The decision was announced with great ceremony, and stern warnings were issued about the consequences of defying galactic law. 3 months later, the UESS Orpheus launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. It was not humanity's largest ship or their most powerful. It was designed for one purpose: exploration. Its crew of 200 had volunteered for what everyone called a suicide mission. Captain David stood on the bridge as the ship made its final approach to the warning beacons. He was a tall man with dark skin and kind eyes, chosen for this mission because his crew would follow him anywhere. The beacons screamed their ancient warnings: turn back, death awaits, none who enter return. Listen to the message play 3 times. Then he gave the order to proceed. The Orpheus crossed the threshold of the terminus expanse at precisely 900 hours ship time on a Tuesday morning. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath. Ahead of them lay nothing at all. They did not turn back. The first thing Captain noticed was the silence. Not just an absence of sound, but an absence of everything. They showed neither stars nor darkness. They showed nothing at all, a blank emptiness that the human brain could not properly process. Some of the crew looked away instinctively. Others stared, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. A few simply closed their eyes. Report, said his voice steady despite the unease crawling up his spine. Lieutenant Commander Sarah checked her instruments twice before answering. She was the ship's chief physicist, a woman who had spent her entire career studying things that should not exist. Navigation systems are functional but showing null readings. We appear to be moving, but I cannot determine our position or velocity relative to anything. Life support. Stable for now, but our external sensors are returning empty data. It is like the universe outside simply stopped. Nodded. This matched the fragmentary data from the probe. 3 seconds of transmission, mostly noise, but buried in that noise had been similar readings. The Orpheus had already lasted longer. Maintain course, he ordered. Document everything. The first hour passed without incident. The crew settled into their routines, though tension hung heavy in the recycled air. They were trained professionals, chosen for their ability to function under extreme stress, but nothing in their training had prepared them for nothing. Ensign Cole was the first to break. He was young, barely 24, assigned to sensor operations. At the 90-minute mark, he stood suddenly from his station, his face pale, his hands shaking. "There's something wrong," he said. "Something is very wrong." The ship's counselor, Doctor, moved to his side immediately. "Tell me what you are feeling." "It's the nothing," Cole said. "Don't you see? There should be something, anything, even darkness is something, but this," he gestured at the blank, "this is wrong, this is broken, we're inside something broken." Within minutes, 2 other crew members reported similar feelings, ordered them to sickbay for observation. The Orpheus pressed on. At the 3-hour mark, the ship's artificial intelligence reported anomalies in its fundamental calculations. "Captain," it said through the bridge speakers, "I am detecting inconsistencies in basic physical constants. The speed of light appears to be fluctuating. Gravitational calculations are returning contradictory results." "Is the ship in danger?" asked. "Unknown. The nature of these anomalies is beyond my programming to assess. I can only report that the rules governing reality seem to be different here." Was already at her station running tests. "It is not the instruments. I have triple-checked. The laws of physics themselves are behaving strangely. Nothing that should threaten us directly, but—" she trailed off uncertain. "But what?" "But I do not understand why. The theory suggested this region would simply unmake matter. That is not what is happening. We are still here. The rules are different, but they still exist." "Considered this. You are saying someone changed the rules." "I am saying someone might have made these rules in the first place." At the 6-hour mark, they found the ships. The Orpheus emerged from the formless nothing into a vast chamber of absolute stillness. There was light here, though it came from no visible source, and floating in that pale light were 417 vessels, arranged in concentric circles around something at the center. "Full stop," ordered, though his voice had lost its steadiness. "Give me a visual." The filled with ghosts. Ships of every design and era, from primitive fusion-powered craft to elegant. They hung motionless, neither drifting nor falling, as though time itself had frozen around them. The missing expeditions breathed. "They are all here, every single one." "Life signs." The sensor officer took a long moment to respond. "Positive, Captain. All vessels show life signs consistent with their crew complements at launch. They are alive. They are all still alive." The implications settled over the bridge like a weight. 10,000 years of expeditions. Crews preserved in whatever state they had been in the moment they arrived. Waiting. "What are they waiting for?" someone asked. Did not answer. His attention had been caught by the thing at the center of the chamber, the point around which all the ships had gathered. It was massive, larger than any structure he had ever seen, and it was shaped like a door. It was closed. The door was made of something that was not matter. Instruments could not determine its composition because, as far as physics was concerned, it did not exist. And yet there it was, visible, tangible, undeniably real. "It is a test," said finally after 3 hours of analysis. "The entire terminus expanse is a test, a filter. Something created this region and placed that door at its center." "A test of what?" asked. Pulled up the sensor readings from the frozen ships, data she had gathered from their automated systems, still recording even as their crews sat suspended in time. Every ship approached the door in the same way, weapons armed, shields raised, defensive postures. She highlighted the readings. The came with a war fleet, the kept their main cannon powered. Even the probe had active defensive protocols. They expected a threat. They expected danger. They came prepared to fight or flee. And the moment they came within range of the door, they stopped. Frozen, not killed, just stopped. Looked at the ancient door waiting in its pool of sourceless light. "The door wants something from us." "I think the door wants us to trust it," met his eyes. "I think you have to approach it with nothing. No weapons, no shields, no defenses at all." The bridge fell silent. Every officer present understood what was being suggested. To lower all defenses in unknown space, to approach a completely unknown alien construct naked and vulnerable, went against every principle of survival. "You are asking me to gamble the lives of this crew on a theory," said. "I am asking you to consider that whatever made this place was looking for something specific, something none of these other species had. Not technology, not weapons, something else. Turn to the 417 ships, 10,000 years. Every one of them had done the sensible thing, the cautious thing, the thing any rational species would do when faced with the unknown. And every one of them had failed. Navigation," he said quietly. "Set course for the door. Tactical, power down all weapons. Helm, lower shields." "Captain," the tactical officer hesitated. "All of them. All of them, every defensive system we have. I want this ship as harmless as a newborn child." The orders were carried out. One by one, the systems that protected the Orpheus went dark. Weapons powered down. Shields dropped. Even the point defense lasers that guarded against micrometeorites went offline. The Orpheus drifted forward, naked and defenseless, toward the door that had swallowed 417 ships. And the door opened. The light that poured through was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. It was warm and cold at once, ancient and new, terrifying and welcoming. It wrapped around the Orpheus like a hand taking hold of something precious. Behind them, the frozen ships began to move again. What waited beyond the door was not empty space or alien architecture or any of the things the crew had imagined. It was a garden. The Orpheus emerged into a realm of impossible beauty. Structures of light and thought drifted among clouds of living color. Shapes that might have been beings moved in the distance, vast and slow, their forms shifting like dreams. "Where are we?" someone whispered. Checked her instruments, though she already knew they would tell her nothing useful. "We are somewhere else. Somewhere outside our universe maybe, or inside something we do not have words for." The response came not through the ship's communication systems, but directly into the minds of every crew member. It was not words exactly, more like understanding, pure concepts delivered without language. "Welcome, we have WITD." Stood from his chair. "Who are you?" "We are the ONES who built, the ONES who seeded, the ONES who hoped. You call us ARCHITCTS. The architects, the mythical beings who had created the hyperspace lanes and seeded life across the galaxy before vanishing millions of years ago. Every species had stories about them, theories about where they had gone and why they had left. They had not left at all. They had been waiting. "Why?" asked. "Why the test? Why the door? Why did you stay hidden?" The response came with images, with feelings, with a story too vast and complex for human minds to fully grasp. But the essential truth was simple enough. The architects had created life. They had spread it across the galaxy like seeds scattered by a gardener. Then they had withdrawn to watch and wait, to see what would grow from their planting. But they had also been afraid that their children would inherit the worst parts of the universe instead of the best, that they would grow up fearful and violent, seeing enemies in every shadow, building walls instead of bridges. So they had created a test, a door that would only open for those who approached without weapons, without fear, without the assumption that the unknown was automatically hostile. Many species came, all were afraid, all expected danger. The door would not open for fear. What about the ships? Asked, the crews that were frozen. They were preserved, waiting for one who could open the way. Now that the door is opened, they too are free. Behind them, through the portal, they could see the chamber where the 417 ships were beginning to move. Crew members were waking from stasis that had lasted centuries, or blinking in confusion at instruments that now showed the impossible door standing wide open. Why us? Asked. Humans have only been in space for 300 years. We are younger than almost every other species. Why were we the ones? The answer came with warmth, with something that might have been affection. Because you were young, because you had not learned to be afraid of everything, because when you saw the nothing, you did not see danger, you saw a question. Hope, the architects called it. The ability to look into absolute darkness and believe that something good might be waiting on the other side. It was not logic or wisdom or technological advancement. It was something simpler and rarer. Faith that the universe was worth trusting. The architects had gifts to give, knowledge accumulated over billions of years, cures for diseases that would not be discovered for centuries, solutions to problems that plagued the galaxy, answers to questions that had haunted philosophers since the first species looked up at the stars and wondered. But more than that, they offered reunion. They were ready to return to the galaxy they had created, to walk among their children again, to share what they had learned in their long exile beyond the door. Captain stood in the garden of impossible light and understood that everything was about to change. The galaxy had grown up. The test was over. The door was open. 6 months later, the UESS Orpheus transmitted its first message back to known space. The signal reached the conclave and was broadcast to every world, every station, every ship in the galactic community. His face appeared on 1 billion screens. Behind him, shapes of light and beauty moved in ways that comprehension. We found them, he said, the architects. They have been waiting for us, for all of us. Ambassador Eth watched the transmission from her private chambers, her scales cycling through colors that had no names. 10,000 years, she thought, 400 ships, and in the end the answer had been so simple. Trust, vulnerability, hope. The things her people had forgotten long ago. In the weeks that followed, the Orpheus returned through the door, bringing with it the architects and every ship that had been frozen in the chamber. Crews from species that had been extinct woke to find the universe transformed. Others returned to that had changed beyond recognition during their absence. The knowledge the architects shared revolutionized galactic civilization. Diseases that had plagued entire species for centuries were cured in days. Technologies that had been theoretical became practical. Questions that had seemed unanswerable suddenly had answers. But the greatest gift was something less tangible. The architects had proven that the universe was not indifferent, not hostile, not empty of meaning. It had been created with intention and care, and those who had created it wanted their children to thrive. The galaxy had spent 10,000 years building walls. Now, finally, they began building bridges instead. In the historical records that followed, one fact was noted above all others. Humanity had been a spacefaring species for only 3 centuries when they accomplished what the galaxy's eldest civilizations could not. They had looked into absolute nothingness, into a mystery that had swallowed every expedition for 10,000 years, and they had done the one thing no other species had thought to do. They had trusted it. The architects later explained that this was precisely the trait they had been searching for. Not intelligence, which many species possessed, not technology, which could be taught, not strength or wisdom or courage, all of which were common enough in the galaxy. Hope, simple, stubborn, irrational hope. The belief that even in the face of absolute darkness, something good might be waiting. Humans had carried that hope into the void when every logical analysis suggested they should turn back. They had lowered their shields and powered down their weapons when every survival instinct screamed otherwise. They had stepped into nothingness and trusted that the nothingness would catch them. And it had. The galaxy was changed forever. The children had finally proven themselves ready to meet their parents, and at the center of it all, remembered in stories and songs and histories for as long as civilization endured, were the strange young creatures from the unremarkable yellow star. The ones who had stepped into nothingness and found everything,